Happy holidays from Chef Mike. What do we have here? Whoa! This is the Italian Holiday Panettone. It's a yeasted bread. It's almost like a cake. It's got so much butter in it and sugar and eggs. And for the holiday spirit, it's got some candied fruit in it. This one has some orange peel, lemon peel, some currants. And this is soaked just in tangerine, but you could also put a little bit of brandy in there. And it's traditional that the cake is baked, I call it a cake because it's so scrumptious, it's traditionally baked and presented in an oven-safe paper molding, something like this. But if you can't find those at your local store, then I'll show you how to bake it just in a regular cake pan as well. Now the traditional panettone is made from a sourdough starter. But lacking that, we can do what bakers call building a sponge. We whisk the yeast into the milk, and then we let that sit for 5 minutes until it's softened. Then we take a little bit of the flour and we add that in first. We beat the dough gently just for about, maybe 15 or 30 beats, just to develop some of the structure of the dough. And then we're going to let this sit in a warm spot and rise until it's triple in volume. While we're waiting for the sponge, we're going to take our butter, our sugar, and our eggs, and we're going to cream them together. Now I've washed my hands really well, and I want to show you a very quick way, an artisan bread making way, that we cream our butter and our sugar. We don't have to aerate the butter as much as if we were making a cake or something like that. All we're trying to do is disperse evenly the sugar and the butter. I teach my students, hold your hand like a human whisk and just put it in there and move it back and forth. And then once that's whipped together, then we can add our eggs. Now again, if we were making a cake or cookies, we would want to add our eggs one at a time. But we're making a bread, so really what we're trying to do is just emulsify the fat from the egg into the fat from the butter. Now the next thing we do is to take the sponge, and you can see how much that has risen and how airy and really spongy it is. So use a spatula or just use your human spatula, as I teach my students, to work all of that sponge down into the creamed butter and sugar. And just beat that together. Now the last thing we want to add is the remaining flour, and I've blended the salt in here so it disperses evenly without too much kneading once it's in the bread. We simulate a mixing bowl. The one hand turns the mixer around and the other one brings the dough hook in from the top to the center. So it looks like folding, but we're coming from the outside in instead of lifting up and getting air into it. Because what we're trying to do is get all of that flour down into the inside of the dough. So we cut into the dough with our scraper, and then when everything is ready, we turn everything out onto our workbench. Now this is going to be a sticky dough, so it doesn't really help you to flour the workbench or anything because it's just going to make the dough heavier and denser. So what you want to do here is you want to take your scraper and you want to move it through the dough in this back and forth motion just to bring the dough together. It's going to be more like a cookie dough or a batter rather than a bread dough. So I'm picking it up and very gently, slowly, I'm working it back and forth. You can see how the dough is starting to hold together. Now to form this into a ball, we take our scraper and then we push the dough away from it like that. We take our scraper and we push the dough away. We take the scraper and we push the dough away. And this is a very artisan baker way of rounding a dough without getting your hands all covered. So put a little bit of flour in the bowl. I'm going to scoop the dough up, place it in the bowl like that. Place another lid on top. I love to use plates. It's just easier. And then any flour that's left or any dough that's left on my hands, I take a little bit of flour and I just rub that. That helps get all the dough off my hands and into the trash before I go to the sink. So a little bit of flour on your fingers, gently open up the dough, and then take your macerated fruit and press that gently in. If there's any extra liquid, kind of squeeze that out because we don't want to make the dough too soft. And then put a little bit of flour on the top of the solids and press them into the dough so we can distribute them evenly. And we gather the dough up. Now, I bring the dough towards myself and then gently I push it towards the camera. Well, or towards you. I turn it, I fold it, and I gently press it away. I turn it, I fold it, and I gently press away. I turn it, I fold it, I gently press away. Now, I'm really not trying to develop the dough or get it to be chewy or anything like that, because as you can see, we already have the structure that we need from our dough. What I'm trying to do is to distribute the solids without making a big mess. So I press down in. I want to make sure that I have solids everywhere and I don't have an area where there's not really anything going on, and if I do, I want to redistribute those pieces. Okay, and you can see the gesture that I'm using. It's more of a down. I'm not really, or I'm rolling the dough outwards. So I take the dough and I'm pressing it down. That helps get the solids everywhere. Or gently I roll it out like that. So you can see what I'm doing here. It's like I'm making a very large dinner roll. And there is the top of my dough. So I want to spread this out. Again, a little flour on the bench and press down gently. Move the dough around. Press out gently. Move the dough around. It's almost like a pizza dough at this point. Use the heel of your hand, the palm of your hand to open it up and don't smash the edges. Okay, and then in a pan that you've prepared with butter and flour or a piece of parchment, we take this whole panettone and we press that down in there. And it should fill the pan about 60% of the way. And then the last thing we do is we take some melted butter that's cooled off a little bit. We don't want it too hot. We want to make sure that it's not going to hurt the yeast. And this will prevent a skin from forming on the dough while it's rising. Well, let's cut down through this and see what we've got. Look at how wonderful that is. Look at how the crumb is open. It almost looks like a pound cake with the dark brown of the sugar and the butter all around the outside. For the complete recipe for the Holiday Panettone, visit my website, www.chefmikebakes.com. Happy holidays. Ciao.